Hello, everyone. I hope you are all physically well and being kind to yourself from an emotional and mental health perspective as well. It certainly is extraordinary times, and even though most of us are isolating, or all of us are isolating at home, I know that our time is still precious, and some of us feel like we're working more than ever. So I really appreciate you taking 30 minutes of your lunchtime to be here with me, and I really hope that it's valuable for you. So I am Stacey Lowman. I am the Career Change co-lead for the Escape the City Career Change Accelerator program, which helps people transition into work that they love and that matters to them and the world. And I help with a lot of them with the practical transitions of making career change, including the financial ones. And my side hustle that I've been working on for 3-4 years now is money and financial well-being coaching. So I focus on helping people feel better and be better with money, and to improve their relationship with money so they feel like they can define what being good with money means for them in their own situation. And previous to this, I have 10 years experience in investment management and working in the city. So hopefully using all of that experience and my own experiences and helping my clients for the last few years, I'm hoping I can share some wisdom with you today for some tips and tricks, both practical but also from an emotional perspective of how to look after your financial health in a crisis and a situation that we currently find ourselves in. So it'll be about 30 minutes. The recording will be available on the Escape the City Facebook page afterwards, and also on our blog. So if this is helpful for you and it might be helpful for others, then please do share it with them afterwards. So I'm going to divide the session into 5 different broad topics. So thinking about firstly our income, and then our savings, investments and debt, all of our must-have spends, our usual typical budgeting, spending and expenses, and then the 5th one is giving, supporting and donating. So those are 5 categories that I usually think about, or how I think about my money. So I hope to give some tips in each of those categories. I can see the chat on my screen. So if you have any questions, please do drop them in there, and hopefully I will leave some time at the end to address those. And if I don't know the answer, I will endeavour to get back to you afterwards. Okay, so taking, I guess the first thing to say before I dip into the categories is there is so much to be anxious about right now, and lots of different areas of our lives and for our loved ones. And financial health is key to our overall well-being. And at times like this, money definitely isn't the most important thing in the world, but it certainly helps when we feel financially secure, when lots of other things in our lives are chaotic. So whatever you're feeling with your own financial situation right now, no blame, no shame. None of us could have anticipated the situation that we find ourselves in as individuals financially, and globally as a community financially. So no self-judgment here, and please do be kind to yourself and what your current financial situation is like. Okay, so taking the first category then with income. Many of us have lost jobs, or if we're self-employed, we're losing contracts, or clients themselves are obviously finding themselves in a difficult situation as well, so might not be spending with us. So it's a very real situation that some people have lost income and jobs right now. It's also a very real anxiety and fear that others are worried that they will lose their job and their income will be reduced or dry up in the next few months. Both of those are very scary situations to be in. Government support that's available to us is still emerging. Some of it is still unclear, and the self-employed and freelancers, any agency workers or zero-hour contract workers are still waiting to hear how the government is going to support them, and hopefully we will get that in the next couple of days. There are so many tips and tricks out there for how to increase your income and look for side hustles in a situation like this. So moving any of your services to online, for example, and lots of side hustles are available, with some sectors of the economy actually being understaffed right now and looking for people to take part-time work. So there is a lot of useful resources for specific ways that you can increase your income. For this session right now, I just wanted to make a couple of points around well-being really with income. So what we typically do with our income is throughout the course of our careers, we expect our income to gradually increase over time with the more experience we get. And so typically the reference point we make for being good with money or having a good income is comparing it to what we made last year or what we made last month, which is typically fine, and that's usually a reference point which we can work with. But in a crisis situation, if it's out of our control that our income has gone down, it might be a more helpful benchmark to think about how much money do we actually need for the next few months. And so long as I'm making that and my income meets those financial needs, then for now, that's okay. So accepting that hopefully upwards gentle trajectory through our career as our income rises, we might see a little blip for a while, then accepting that right now from a well-being perspective might be okay. So when we get into the expenses part of the session later, maybe calculating what a new, more helpful comparison or reference point is for how much income you need to make over the next few months might be helpful, a different way for you to think about how much money you need to make right now. And also, it's very easy when we get into a crisis situation to panic about our income if it's a very real risk or it's a perceived risk of how much income we're going to make over the next few months. And we tend to go into panic mode and we work really hard on our small businesses or work through like longer days than we were working before if we're working at home for companies, to kind of feel like we're doing as much as we can to make as much income as possible right now. There's a real risk that leads us to burnout, and we're also realizing that now's a time to think about how we want to spend the precious time that we have, and there are other things that we want to be using our time on right now, like looking after loved ones and staying connected to people outside of your household. So there are lots of tangible things that you can do to make money and increase your income right now. I would suggest that a good starting point is to think about how much time you realistically have during this period of isolation that you want to spend on generating income. And if that's coming up with a really specific timetable of I have this many hours on this day to work to make money, or I have 3 days this week, or I can only do evenings, whatever that is for you, figuring out how much time you have to work on your business or your side hustle or your job or finding new ways of making money, have that as a starting point to then help you figure out what you can do or what would be the most helpful or lucrative things that you can do within that time to make some money. And then with like a creative spin on it, start thinking about what skills that you have and who needs help right now, and how the skills and gifts that you have could bring value to those people that need it. So think about not just whatever job title you had or you do have or the current work that you do, but list out all of the potential skills that you have, even in jobs that you've previously had that you're transitioning out of. Make a list of all the potential skills that you have, any online software that you're really good at using, if you used to be an accountant, if you're a yoga instructor, if you can do mindfulness wellbeing, if you're some sort of coach, if you're great with spreadsheets. Just make a really long list of all of the skills that you have that might be valuable to somebody right now. And then make a list of all of the networks and communities that might value that sort of help and support, or indeed still organizations and employers that are out there that are currently understaffed and are looking for additional support. There is no shame in any side hustle that you get right now. I think one of the positive things, if that's appropriate to say that, one of the positive things that's coming out of this crisis is that we're really understanding and readdressing what valuable work looks like in a community. And thankfully, we're recognizing how important it is for people who are working in our supermarkets and bringing food to our tables, for example. So if that's something that you need to do temporarily, then that's absolutely being an incredible support to our community and making income at the same time. So be as creative as you can with thinking about all of the ways that you could potentially make money right now, and what networks and organizations are out there that are looking for that sort of help, and figuring out ways that you can reach out to them and offer that support. Lots of people are very gratefully, and it's lovely to see people offering their skills and support for free right now. For example, lots of wellbeing virtual sessions. That's totally okay. If you really are struggling financially, I wouldn't put yourself under pressure to offer your services for free. So it might be the case that you set up instead a donation, and just be very open about the experience that you're facing right now. You're a freelancer with not guaranteed income. If people would be kind enough, if it's a helpful session to them, to offer you some sort of donation, or to maybe set it up that I'm going to be doing this for free or for 50% off whilst the self-isolation is going on. So then you still set an expectation that this is a valuable resource that you hope to receive an income from later. But I wouldn't want anybody to feel guilty right now for trying to charge for any services. But obviously, if you can offer any for free, then that's equally great too. But we need to be realistic about the financial situation that we find ourselves in as well, because we can't sustain others if we can't sustain ourselves. So hopefully that's some helpful tips and tricks on income. If any of you have specific suggestions of ways that people can make money whilst they're at home, then that's great too. You can obviously look at the Escape Jobs board that has some really awesome jobs out there at the moment, including remote ones. And there was a great article on the BBC that my Escape colleagues shared with me on listing out lots of organisations that are hiring lots of people right now, if you wanted to check that out. So the second category is savings, investments and debt. So this category is all about getting clear on what money you have and what money you owe right now. So we all get used to the flow of money, and enough money comes in every month, and so we don't put too much thought into it all the time about where we spend it, because we get into a rhythm of thinking it's going to come in. There's nothing more addictive than a monthly salary, as they say. But suddenly, like times in global pandemics, that flow of money might dry up. So it's a really important time to know just exactly how much we have available to us and how much we owe. So if you can list out all of your bank accounts, any savings pots that you have, emergency funds or ISAs, savings accounts, pots, a lot of banks like Monzo, for example, can now do pots of money, any money you have in your pots. List all of those out with any charges or dates or limits to how much you can withdraw, so you know how much money you have and how accessible it is to you right now. Ideally, with any investments, so any investments in stock markets or fixed term savings where there might be a high charge for you to withdraw it, ideally we would try and avoid those, withdrawing those in a situation like this, but sometimes needs must. But hopefully there are some savings available first that you can call on. And then if you do have any debts and you're still worried about having to pay minimum payments, or you can't afford to pay it off, or the interest is racking up, call all of your financial providers and have that conversation with them. They are legally required to offer you some sort of support. So ask them what payment breaks might be available on any debt repayments, if they can reduce your interest rate, if they have a better offer for perhaps a 0 interest rate credit card they can switch you to, or something like that. There's a lot of empathy and understanding within organisations and individuals right now. So make the call. All you can do is ask, and see what help and support is available for you in terms of paying debt back. If you are one of the fortunate ones to still have the same income that you were on a few months ago, or 80% of it, for example, with the government support, and it might be the case that you're spending less in the next few months as we're all isolating at home, you might want to think about where you are saving money, or spending less money because you're not going out, and where you could potentially start saving that. So you start to build a buffer now, should this situation go on longer than any of us are hoping that it would. So that's savings, investments and debt. Get really clear on what you have and what you owe, and anything that you do owe, make those calls to see any leverage that the financial providers have to give you a bit of a break with payback in this difficult time. Okay. So section number 3 is all of your must-have spends. So listing out your must-have spends and everything that you're expecting to pay out, probably on a monthly basis, but also don't forget those less frequent ones. Listing those out to give you an idea of how much money you really need to make in the short term right now. And then going through those must-have spends, how much you expect each of them to be, and then things that you can do to try and reduce them in some way. So the biggest lever that we have is obviously mortgage and rent. There is now emergency legal protection, so landlords can't evict you if you can't afford to pay your rent. That's awesome support for lots of people who might need it. For that, I would suggest that if you're going to be in that situation, that you collate any evidence that you have that your income has been impacted by the COVID-19 crisis, so that you can demonstrate that your situation is legitimate and your income has been affected and you financially can't afford to pay that rent, just in case anybody down the line, financial providers or your landlord or anyone else, asks for evidence that your income has been affected. It's really good to collect that. So be that emails from clients saying they can't afford to pay you, or whatever paperwork that you get from employers as to if you need to go on temporary leave or you're getting laid off or made redundant. Keep all of that information somewhere that you can share with landlords or financial providers. Also, if you have a mortgage, I think most of us are now aware that we're being offered 3-month mortgage breaks from most mortgage providers, so definitely make that call and see if that's available to you. I overpay on my mortgage typically, and for right now, I've just called them up and said that I would pay the minimum amount I need to pay every month. But I did ask them if it would be available to me if my income is affected, that I can take that payment break, and it is, which is very good to know that I can leverage that when I need to. So again, call your mortgage providers and ask them what might be available to you. If your income has been affected as a household by COVID-19, you can go on the government website and see if a council tax reduction is available to you. With all of your bills, so your water, gas, energy, internet providers, just make a call and see how they're willing to support you. Most of my bill providers have sent an email listing out all of their the available support. I pay by direct debit for some of my energy providers, and so I logged into my account and it looked like I'd been building up a cash buffer over time, which meant that they've allowed me to reduce my direct debit payments for the next few months and to wait until that cash buffer that I've already built up goes down a little bit before I increase my payments again. So that's very helpful. And yeah, any other must-have spends that you can think about, let me know. But those are some tips for some obvious must-have spends. Now, when it comes to less frequent must-have spends that we have, diarise any key dates for less frequent must-have spends. So any of those annual ones that creep up on us, MOT is sometimes an example, which I know that we've had we can postpone that until next year, thankfully, for anyone who's a car owner. So we don't need to do our MOTs this year. I also, if you think about parking permits or any insurances that you pay on an annual basis, check all of your less frequent must-have spends, service charge and ground rent if you live in apartments or flats, and diarise those key dates, because the last thing we want in situations like this is having a nasty surprise of a big bill payment that we totally forgot that was due to be paid. So make sure you know when any of those less frequent spends are coming up so you can prepare for them, or call the provider in advance to see if they can help you out and offer you some sort of repayment deal that feels a bit more manageable right now. Okay, let me just check time, 10 minutes. So the 5th one is your other typical expenses, so our everyday expenses. Now, if we are self-isolating, one of the silver linings is that some of those everyday or monthly expenses that we typically spend, we won't be spending on. So things like travel, things like going out with for food, things like our costs related to our socializing, all of those things are expected to go down again, which is why it's really important to think about those things that you won't be spending money on. and how that means that you might have a bit more freedom to earn a little less money right now. So think about, maybe look back at a previous bank statement from February and highlight all of the things that you won't be spending. That might give you some comfort if your income has gone down. And it also might mean, if you're still earning the same amount of income, that you could afford to save a little bit more and start to build a buffer. If you have maybe like a rail card, or you had some sort of travel card for commuting to work that you're no longer going to be using for the next few months, I know that some travel providers are offering refunds if you had bought like an annual ticket for your commute, for example. So get in touch with any rail companies that you have a travel card with, and see if you can get a refund on a discount on any of those. And if you've spent money on events that are no longer going ahead, if you're not getting offered refunds from the event hosts, then call your bank. And I know that some are offering to help out with offering refunds or compensation for any events that you'd paid for, or holidays and things that you can no longer go on. And then everyday spends, another one is obviously subscriptions. So look out for any direct debits or standing orders that come out, including on your phone. So check your subscriptions for apps and things that you have on your phone, and make sure that you're not spending on any of those. There are a lot of free trials being offered right now. So things like audiobooks or resources online that you can access for free for a while. If you sign up to any of those, again, just take note of any dates where you will be expected to start paying again, so you know when those repayments are going to begin. And if any of your direct debit or standing order, or any companies that you think you have direct debits and standing orders with, aren't letting you cancel them, that might mean that it's a third type of recurring payment called a CPA, where you might have to call your bank and see if they can cancel it for you. Or there might be a contract attached to it, where if the organisation thinks that you're due to pay them for a 12-month fixed period, then they might think that they still have the right to take that money. So you might, if that's the situation and they're not letting you cancel a direct debit or standing order, just keep calling them, your bank and the provider, and be a real pain for them. So hopefully you can manage to cancel any of those. And then the fifth, we're really whizzing through these, we've got a few minutes left. And with the fifth section is any ways that you give or support or donate to causes that you believe in financially. So now is a time that we all really want to help others. It's also a really good time to reflect on what sort of world that we want to live in, and what we want a post-COVID-19 world to look like. So thinking about who you want to support financially, and how you can afford to do that right now, given your current financial situation. So think about, if you do have space and capacity in your budget to donate and give to charitable causes, think really deeply about the ones that you want to be supporting. If you have values aligned to sustainability, and you're hoping that COVID-19 is going to be a catalyst for us focusing more and prioritizing more our planetary health, as well as kind of profits and capitalism, then think about what financial providers that you want to be working with, and are there green and ethical options out there that might be more aligned to your values. And then also how you want to support local businesses and freelancers or creative sectors that might be really suffering right now. And if you have financial capacity in some way to shop locally online so you can keep local businesses alive, or if freelancers can offer you any work or support that you might need, and if you can support those in that way, if you can buy vouchers for local restaurants or something like that. So it's just a really nice time to pause and reflect and think about what values we want to be guiding the way that we're managing our money. So hopefully that was very helpful. We have about 5 minutes left. I know that was a real whistle-stop tour. If you have any questions, please do drop them in the chat box. The gov.uk/coronavirus website is a really good place to start for looking at government support that's available. Also, if you have a small business, lean on your accountant so you get the most up-to-date information. Any contracts that you have with financial providers, with clients, with suppliers, make sure you know what your contracts actually say. So sometimes we make assumptions around the type of relationship, like the financial relationship we have with a client or a bank or a financial provider or a supplier. Now is a good time to really understand contractually what your rights are and what you've committed to give to others. So hopefully in situations like this, empathy and strength of relationships rule out, and most of those relationships we want to retain after the COVID-19 crisis, and they're more important than the money itself. But sometimes it's helpful if conversations do become transactional, that you know what your rights are. So it's a good time to make sure you're clear on any contracts you have and what they say. So a question from Rosie. I left my job 3 weeks before the coronavirus kicked off and bought into a premium LinkedIn subscription for job hunting. Would you recommend keeping it in this time or letting it go until the employment market picks up? Really good question. And I would normally say congratulations for leaving a job if it doesn't fulfill you, being working at Escape, but it's really unfortunate timing. So I'm sorry if that's added to any anxiety that you have right now. LinkedIn is a very well-known place for finding work. I think there's lots of other ways that you can find jobs. So thinking about, you can always contact organizations directly or individuals directly on LinkedIn without the premium subscription. If there are lots of companies and sectors that are very understaffed right now, so depending on whatever skills you have, Rosie, which I'm sure are a lot, thinking creatively about how you might offer those to some organizations that are understaffed. So doing some research on LinkedIn without necessarily having the premium offering, and then contacting them directly, offering your skills. Escape the City are just kicking off, I think, in the next couple of weeks. I'm not sure on the dates, but we will post a link to a free 4-week redundancy program, which we're offering, which is actually for anybody who's not currently in work and will be looking for work in a difficult time like this. So that will be a free 4-week program, and that program will include lots of, oh, that's so great, you're signed up already, amazing. Yeah, on that program we will give lots of tips for how to find work, and hopefully find work that matters to you and the world at the same time. So I would maybe suggest anything that you have a subscription to is reversible, right? You can always sign up again in a month's time. So perhaps, and I think with LinkedIn's premium, depending on how much you've paid for, you might still have a couple of weeks once you cancel it that you still have access to it. So just spend a bit of time on it over the next few days and see how really helpful it is for you, and then try the free version and see if you think that what you're getting for the premium is worth it. But really excited to have you on the redundancy program too. Great. Well, that brings us to the end of our 30 minutes. Thank you so much for joining. Yeah, when it comes to money at a time like this, from a well-being perspective, no matter what your numbers are, there's lots of noise out there. We're constantly saying, I shoulda, woulda, coulda with our money. There's always something better we could have done. There's always someone else doing something better. There's always someone else with other hacks and tips and tricks. Sometimes it's good just to go back to your numbers, go back to your own situation and figure out how much money you really need, all of the different skills that you have to offer and ways that you could use those to help people and organizations that might need help right now, and have the conversations. So I think every day since the self-isolation, I've made an effort to call at least one financial provider that I have a bill with or something else with, or any personal or professional relationships that you have that involve money in some way, having open conversations where you're both being clear with each other on what your current financial situation is, what help you need if you need it, and what help you can offer if you need it. So you're getting used to having those financial conversations before you find yourself in in trouble. So now is a time to really practice being open and honest and having empathetic and clear conversations around money. So good luck. We'll post this video. If you have any questions, then please do get in touch with Stacey at escapethecity.org, or post them under the Facebook page when we post this video, and I will endeavour to get back to you. But good luck, and thanks so much for joining, and take care, everybody.